Okay, so today we're going to be spending a couple of days on what ISM calls outsourcing strategies. Kind of outsourcing strategies, but it's kind of a bunch of other stuff too. So conduct analysis to develop insourcing or outsourcing strategies. So insourcing is the make. We would make it in our factories if we were to insource. Outsource means we're going to get a supplier to make it for us. Make or buy. So this is usually the first question when you're sourcing something. Are we going to make it or are we going to buy it? So what is PACCAR's strategic advantage? It's not making components. So we usually buy those. But the manufacturing engineering groups in the plants are ones that usually conduct the make or buy analysis for us. Has a lot to do with, labor rates and labor hours and how long it takes to put the thing together on the floor, that type of thing. Feasibility, using a combination of company strategies and the ability of a capable outsource partner. Companies' activities can be divided into three categories. Core activities. It is thought of as the source of a company's differentiation or competitive advantage in the marketplace. So PACCAR's competitive advantage is the assembling of the truck into a quality first-class truck, not making the components. Enabling. These activities are not core, but are necessary to realize the company's value-add proposition. In some cases, enabling activities may contribute substantially to a company's competitive advantage. So for PACCAR, enabling activities, I guess we'll call them, would be things like PACCAR parts. Some would argue that it's core, but it's really not. It's not assembling the truck in the plant. It's an enabling activity. Another enabling activity for PACCAR would be our PACCAR Financial Corporation. We're not a bank, but we make a lot of money on financing trucks for customers. And then there's ancillary activities, activities that are required to operate but are generic across most companies. So janitorial, landscaping, food service, those are all ancillary activities, and we usually outsource those. Needs identification. So company outsource becomes some external, or companies outsource because some external companies can leverage expertise and economies of scale across multiple clients. You see this a lot with IT in India. A lot of people outsourcing IT to India because it's expensive to have programmers, and if you only need them for a certain period of time, it's much better to go to somebody that has them on staff. Additional factors that influence the outsourcing decision: unloading assets off the balance sheet, reducing inventory overhead costs, freeing up internal resources, taking advantage of technology, accelerating development. So you see a lot of software companies are big into outsource. I mean, some of these software companies will outsource their entire purchasing department. That's kind of where they come from. They just feel it's better to outsource this because they can drop employees quickly if they need to. I mean, PACCAR can too, but it's also more expensive to outsource these employees because you got to pay a temp firm like Volt or something like that. But I think that a lot of the managers in tech have a hard time laying people off, so they just figure it's easier to outsource everything and then they can just cut salaries. Disadvantages of outsourcing: potential loss of intellectual property. If you outsource your core activities, that's a mistake. Lack of suppliers with adequate capability or capacity, always an issue. Loss of control over quality, that's another issue. Loss of political capital or public goodwill because of downsizing. Potentially long and involved supplier selection. Yeah. Loss of capability and resultant inability to insource later. If you've outsourced for a number of years, you've kind of lost the knowledge on how to build a certain component. And then you develop supplier management and measurement expertise in the outsource area. This is, a lot of companies are not very good at that. Methods and processes. Basic method is determine what it costs to conduct the enabling activity in-house. So again, we don't outsource our core activities. So we would not outsource truck assembly. But we could outsource PACCAR parts, we could outsource purchasing, we could outsource PACCAR financial. But what does it cost to conduct the enabling activity in-house versus what it would cost to have the supply base do it? And this is how we look at components. For instance, lift axles. We could make lift axles, but when we do a study to make them in-house, we probably don't have enough space, so we'd have to expand the factory. And then our labor rates are usually higher than the supplier, so it's usually going to cost us more to make the lift axle in-house than it is going to be to buy it from a supplier. Analysis of components. First step is to fully understand the process of the part that may be outsourced. So this is a lot what manufacturing engineering will do for us when they do a make or buy decision. Provide an understanding of the complexity of the requirements, the part. If it's a part, some of the issues to look at are revision histories, unique equipment, production, transportation costs, how critical is the part to the business. I mean, on trucks, all parts are critical. You got to have them all. Some parts are easier to dual source than others, though. If it's a service or a business process, a thorough mapping of the process, got to know what the process is. Is the function performed in the same way? Or all the key points of what are the key points of interaction? What are the consequences of poor service? And does the whole service need to be outsourced? Can you outsource your accounts receivable, or how about your whole accounting and controller operation? Once the outsourcing need is understood through research, thorough research must be conducted to identify a supplier potentially capable of meeting needs. So you got to look at capabilities of the supplier, the location of the supplier, values of their culture, who are their current customers. And then you've got a break-even analysis. So you'll see questions on the test for break-even. The output level at which revenues equal costs, or that the costs of insourcing and outsourcing are the same. So this is break-even here. This is total revenue. This is total cost. So above break-even, total revenue is higher than total cost. Below break-even, total cost is higher than total revenue. And here's some questions that you can practice on for break-even. You'll see these on the test. So this one is a simple break-even. Break-even is equal to the fixed costs divided by the contribution margin. You want to cover these fixed costs with the contribution margin. Contribution margin being the revenue minus cost of goods sold. Variable cost per unit. Sorry, revenue per unit minus variable cost per unit. That's the contribution margin. And that's got it, that where that covers the fixed cost is your break-even point. Here's a more complex model here. Question. And there are answers here. I don't think I have them here, but if you look in the folder under exam 1, break even, the instructor copy has the answers. So I would encourage you to go look at those. It'll tell you how to do it. You'll see them on the test. They always have a break-even question or two on there. Okay. Cost estimation process. So a couple of ways to do it. You can estimate based on triangulation of 2 or 3 supplier quotes, or you can do a clean sheet should cost from the bottom up. You know, look at the number of hours to complete the job along with labor hours, rates, material costs, and overhead. This is essentially how manufacturing engineering would do a make or buy analysis. This is very common in purchasing, is where you get 2 or 3 quotes and look to see where they're at. Develop the fact base, understanding the business requirements, what is it that's needed, what level, what is the minimum service level, what kind of lead time, and looking at full internal costs, maintenance, travel, real estate, leases, WIP. Do you have to expand the factory to make more axles? Headcount, opportunity cost, etc. And so you develop the full internal cost, and then you develop the full external costs. Supplier quotes, transportation, rework, startup costs, cost of capital. Then finance controller's office can usually tell you what they're using for a cost of capital. There's some fancy ways to figure it, but nobody really uses it that way. Choose a scenario to be tested, starts with in-house scenario, and then move to well-defined alternatives. Variables should reflect the cost drivers, and develop the analytical model. So this is really what manufacturing engineering will do for you. Then you've got a risk analysis, cost, volume levels, service levels. The biggest risk we have is not as the supplier not delivering on time. The other big risk is the supplier going out of business, but usually on a new supplier, our controllers group will look at their financials and tell us if we want to do business with them or not. And then you got incremental cost per each level of production. So this is an analysis for marginal cost. You see it's a little deal, jackets per day. You got fixed costs, you got variable costs, and you got total cost, which is an addition of the two. And then you got an average cost, which is D6 divided by A6, which is the volume. So the total cost divided by the volume, or the output. Then the marginal cost is what it costs to produce one more. So you want to buy factories where the average total cost, or ATC, crosses the marginal cost, because they're becoming more efficient, but then things start getting hard to do. They got the output's too high for the facility, and the average cost starts to rise because the marginal cost is rising. And that's what you're seeing here. So these are variable costs, and these are the fixed costs. So just kind of know the difference between the average cost and the marginal cost. Marginal cost is what it costs to do one more unit. Okay. Factors influencing outsourced make or buy decisions. Long-term supply implications. What's the long-term effect on supply base? Is it going to change the competitive landscape? What about capacity? You don't want to outsource any of your core business and give away technology and create a competitor, or make it difficult to insource later. Care must be taken to ensure you don't outsource your core competencies. So capability company believes may become strategically valuable in the future, it should choose to insource that activity. Because if you can outsource your core capabilities, then why do you even exist? Why not have the other guy do it? He can do it just as well. So this is the classic is IBM. They were big in typewriters in the 70s. The computers came along, and IBM was thinking, well, we've been producing typewriters, so it's the hardware and the computer that matters. That's where we're going to make the money. The software, we don't really care about. We'll just find some company to do software. Microsoft, oh yeah, okay, these guys are fine. They'll work. Guess what? It wasn't the hardware that mattered in computers, it was the software. IBM kind of messed that one up. Outsourcing certain functions may also affect the company's brand image. So supply risk, poor decision may disrupt the supply chain. So Boeing outsourcing all of their supply to the 787 and some of their other planes, causing them all kinds of problems. Security of the process, security information when you got a bunch of suppliers. So this is why Airbus could make a 787 plastic plane very quickly compared to Boeing, because they just used Boeing suppliers. TCO, we'll discuss in 1F2. Competitive issues, make sure that outsourcing, you're not creating a future competitor. Always a problem if you outsource your core capabilities, especially. Reduction in assets. So outsourcing will allow a company to free up capital so they can concentrate on core processes. In theory, many companies choose to outsource the production of a new product, at least initially, or at startup. We can't really do that, but if you're making widgets, you might be able to do that. So basically, have somebody else do the start, stop, getting the thing going, and then pull it back inside once it's up and running. Flexibility to change. When processes are outsourced, your ability to affect the change is much diminished than if it's insourced. And if key parameters change over time, it may affect the cost of the product. And then there's public relations. Stage of the product life cycle should be considered in the make-buy decision. So outsourcing can be more economical early on in the product's life, or also later on in the product's life. So as sales increase, it becomes more cost-effective to own the machinery. In the mature phase, where many suppliers are available, outsourcing can help drive down costs. But when you move to the decline phase, you can go back to outsourcing again because it's more economical. Lower tier suppliers, many risks in supply chain come from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers. We got to look at the entire supply chain. Often we don't know what it is because our tier 1 suppliers won't tell us. Understand if the lower tiers are complying with laws and good business practice. And risk sharing, outsourcing shares the risk with the supplier. Consider using risk and reward sharing contracts. Packer doesn't really like the reward side of the contracts. All right, that's for today. Let's do a quick question here. Supply manager for an organization that manufactures kitchen appliances in the UK has just completed the cost calculations for a make or buy decision regarding a critical component for a new product. She has capability and capacity for manufacturing a component in-house, but the cost figures present an image of substantial savings by outsourcing. What should she do next? Any guesses? The way this question is structured, you don't want to implement a final decision.
D, a D
Yeah, I don't think you want to implement a final decision here.
or A?
Yeah, I would go with A because that's kind of further up the chain.
Mhm.
They're not quite done analyzing yet, and all the rest of these answers say, yeah, we're done analyzing. So this is the one that doesn't go with the other three. A it is. All right, so there's 5 questions out there. So go ahead and work on them, and we will go over answers at 2:25. So just do the first page. Time to go look at some answers here. Busy trying to remember how to do this math. A5. Okay. Number one is Bravo. And net present value. That's right out of your college classes. 2 is Charlie, because ERP is a software system geared to manufacturing organizations, not to healthcare, which is kind of a weird question, but okay. 3 is Delta, because testing is less likely to cause reevaluation. I disagree. I would say C. C is not correct because the projected life cycle of product drives demand and the key factor in making a make or buy analysis. It's just the question's worded kind of weird. But that's ISM question for you. All right, number 4 is Delta. So the way you do this one, you kind of do break even. Your fixed costs are 1.5 million. That's what you're trying to, how many units to get to 1.5 million. That's what you need to know. So your contribution margin is these variable costs minus the sales price. So you add up all the variable costs, get 1029. Contribution margin is 25 minus 1029 or 14.71. And then you divide that 1.5 million by 14.71 and you get 103,671. That's your basic break-even type of question. And then 5 is another kind of strange average cost, marginal cost question. Remember, your marginal cost is what does it cost to add one more unit? So what you do is you add up all of the variable costs, and they've got some red herrings in here. So fixed costs are $1 per square foot using 120 square feet. We don't care. What you need to know is the variable costs for marginal cost. You know, it costs you at 25 pieces, it's 95 plus 75 plus 10. And then when you go to 30 pieces, it's 115 plus 90 plus 15. Subtract the 2 and you get 40. But you got to divide the 40 by 5 because you're going from 25 pieces to 30 pieces. Answer's 8. So I always have to think about these every time I do them every year, but you know, you'll pick them up. Any questions on any of that?
Just a little tip for those who are going to take the exam too. Usually with the math problems, I like to read the end to see exactly what they're asking for and then read backwards. That saves time.
Yeah, so all of these kind of problems, Henry's saying, it's like, you know, you can make an educated guess. You got a minute a question. So you look at it, like Henry's saying, make an educated guess, flag it. You can always come back to it if you got more time. Don't spend 5 minutes trying to figure the math out. Because usually you can eliminate 2 of the answers pretty easily. Any other issues? All right. Talk to you guys tomorrow. We'll finish up with outsourcing.
Thanks,
Yep.
Thank you.